When I grew up in my youth fellowship, the church in which I was converted, we used to go on an annual holiday, youth fellowship holiday. We'd go all over the country, different places, and we'd go for a week. And always on the first night, we'd start off with a mystery walk. And boy, was it a mystery, because none of us did any planning. It was before the days when people did risk assessments. We literally made it up as we went along. And it was in the dark, and it was often in the woods as well. I remember there was one occasion when a friend of ours fell down quite a large pothole and we had to carry her back to the chalets that we were staying in. Well, we found ourselves in a place on that walk where we didn't want to be. And being in a place where God doesn't want you to be can be pretty horrible. And that's the backdrop to the passage that we've heard. God's people are exiled in Babylon. They aren't where they want to be. And there's a lesson in that for us as well. Maybe the Methodist Church isn't where God wants us to be. Maybe as a denomination, maybe as a local fellowship, we're not exactly where God wants us to be. Maybe we think that where we are now is not quite the sort of destiny that God had for us. Now, the first part of Isaiah prophesies judgment on God's people, which eventually leads to the exile. And the section we're in contains more of a message of hope for those who are in exile to the Babylonians. And the prophet's message in chapter 40 and including this passage in 43 turns much more to a Jewish people who have found their whole world shattered, a bit like we've had our whole world shattered for a different reason with coronavirus. But the people are in exile in Babylon, but God shows the possibility of return to Jerusalem. But to get back to their own country out of exile would be scary. They knew the stories of people living there, but some of them hadn't even been born in Jerusalem. They'd been born in captivity. So the journey back to where God wanted them, what God wanted them to be, would be hazardous. It was likely to be a 500 to 900 mile journey, depending on which route you took. It was going across a desert, and there were dangers of the desert. And remember, some of them didn't even know what home was. It seems to me that to get to where God wants us to be as His church, as churches, it may be scary and it may take us on an unfamiliar journey. Forget the former things, says God through the prophet. Do not dwell on the past. Forget the former things. That's interesting, isn't it? It doesn't mean a kind of collective dementia, but it means forget in the sense of clinging to the past. God's people have this tendency to sort of look back in unhelpful ways. It's good to look back and to celebrate and appreciate and learn how to deal with the present and the future because of the lessons of the past. But the kind of looking back that sometimes happens is the trying to live in the past, looking back perhaps to the good old days of Egypt, seemingly forgetting the slavery bit. And what is it that the people of God are asked to forget in this passage? We're told, He who made a way through the sea, a path through the mighty waters, who drew out chariots and horses, the army and reinforcements together, and they lay there, never to rise again, extinguished, snuffed out like a wick. They're being asked to forget one of the most foundational and formative things in Israel's history. When they were led out of slavery, the waters were parted for their escape, and God says, don't look back there. And He says it because He's doing a new thing. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Now that doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it comfortable. It doesn't mean it will be welcomed by everyone, because there is this tendency to live in the past with the former things. But God says, I'm doing a new thing. Think of Joshua. Joshua stood on the threshold of the promised land and then turned back because of the fear of the people and the fear of the future. They missed the opportunity at that point. Read about it in Numbers 13. And as a result, the people spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness. For many of us in churches, we stand on a threshold. We can look back, we can long for the former things, or we can let them go. Forget the former things, the old ineffective ways of doing preaching plans. See, I'm doing a new thing. Forget the former things, the Bible studies and fellowship meetings that have not seen a new disciple in many years. See, I'm doing a new thing. Forget the former thing. the way that preachers and ministers have to chase around and aren't able to offer consistency and continuity. See, I'm doing a new thing. Forget the former things, the maintenance of the cycle and program of church life. See, I'm doing a new thing. Where do we need to forget the former things in our situations and recognise the new things that God wants to do? Near us is a little cut-through road, more of a lane really, and when there's heavy rain, it can flood and become impassable. Well, the road ahead for us may seem challenging and difficult, but God makes a way for his people. The right way of remembering the Exodus for God's people was to focus on what God made possible, because it's always looking forward to what God makes possible. So in the reading we've heard, we hear about the wild animals honour me, the jackals, the owls, because I provide water in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. I give drink to my people, my chosen, the people I formed for myself, that they may proclaim my praise. Now, those words are there because they're an encouragement to those who heard Isaiah's words to be prepared for the journey. God is saying, look, you may look at the long journey, you may look at the desert, it may look pretty daunting to you, but this is not a problem for me, and I'm going to take you there. The wrong way was to wish they were back in Egypt again to live off that experience. God has new ones lined up. Let's not miss the blessing because we don't like the idea of the journey. There is change ahead. Things will inevitably be different. Methodism, or our local manifestation of it, will experience different people, new circumstances, a new Methodist year. In addition, coronavirus has been and continues to be a challenging time for the church as well as society generally. But actually, this could be a huge wake-up call for us. Now is the time for courage and boldness and a firm foot forward. Not with our ideas, but with the way God has been leading us. Maybe we need to get on that journey with God. Maybe we've never decided to go on that journey, and maybe we can make a decision to journey with God today. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm not a gifted gardener. I like gardens, but I don't like gardening. But when I do plant something, on those rare occasions, it excites me to see the green shoots springing up, showing promise and potential. The promise and potential for us is great under God.